Hi, everyone. Good evening. I am Jenny, Uplifter's Community Building Officer, and thank you for joining me tonight. For those who have just joined us, um, Uplifters is a nonprofit organization empowering underprivileged communities with online education and peer support, and we offer a free online money management course for domestic workers. And it's very easy to enroll in our free online course, our signature course, Dare to Dream. You just need to click send message on our Facebook page to enroll. I'm just going to screen the yes our Facebook page. So just go to uplifters.community and then click the send message button to enroll in Dare to Dream. So yeah, this is a special episode of our Uplift Your Night series, and we are delighted to be here with you tonight. And our first objective with this Uplift Your Night Facebook Live is to be together. Uplifters is first and foremost a community. And secondly, we want to keep learning together and supporting each other. For tonight's episode, we will be discussing updates on hiring, changing employers, and other questions you may have about this in light of the current situation. So, yeah, we are going to introduce our guest for tonight. Hi, Victoria.
Hello. Hi, Jenny. Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome to our broadcast, Victoria, and thank you so much for being here with us tonight. And uh, we are we are pleased to have you joining us to discuss this important topic. Victoria is the communications manager of Fair Employment Foundation in Hong Kong, and the mission of Fair is to build market solutions to end the forced labor of migrant workers across Asia. One of its initiatives is the Fair Employment Agency. It is recognized as the standard for ethical and professional practices for all employment agencies, one that is transparent and trustworthy and fair to both employees and employers. Victoria joined the fair in August 2017, following experience in communications and fundraising at Enreach, a great charity providing face to face financial education and debt counseling to migrant domestic workers in Hong Kong. She's motivated by the opportunity to improve the recruitment system to work better for workers and their families. So, yes, Victoria, yeah, good evening again. And feel free to share a bit more about yourself and your work before we share with the audience what we have on the menu for tonight.
Sure. Yes. Thank you so much, Jenny, for having me here. Yeah, I am from Fair Employment Foundation, and we work in a variety of ways to improve the system for migrant workers. And in Hong Kong, we have Fair Agency, Fair Employment Agency, which is a nonprofit employment agency for domestic helpers. And what makes us different is that we're very transparent and very professional, and we want to set the standard for how employment agencies should be, and that means just working for the interests of workers and their employers. And first thing is that we don't charge fees to workers, no matter what their contract status is, finished, broken, or terminated. And we work with workers to help them find their next best job, next great job, where they'll be happy and successful. And yeah, and something that we do at Fair Agency is that we want employers and workers to be very informed about what's happening, so that they can make good decisions in their next hire or next job that they're moving on to, or even within their job. So yeah, and so happy to be here. Thank you for organizing this and inviting me to the community.
Yeah, it's our pleasure to have you. And yes, we can't thank you enough for your support. And yes, before we start, to everyone joining us, please do not hesitate to ask your questions in the comments or just let us know that you're here with us and just say hi. And we'd love to hear from you if you have questions about if employers are hiring right now, if there are COVID testing and vaccination requirements, and if you want to change employers, what do you need to do? Yeah, we will cover all of them as much as we can. And yeah, even after we end this live, we will reply to your questions. So yes, just please send your questions. Victoria is here with us tonight, and let's as well, yeah, what we for sure will have reliable information. Yeah. So yes, yeah, let's get started. Well, last year we had you as our guest for our Facebook Live. I think we called it antivirus for domestic workers. So it was during, I think, um, the early part of the year. The pandemic just started, and since then, situation still continues to evolve, and changes in rules and regulations are, it's hard to keep up. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's hard to find also to navigate the which information is correct, and really what we really need to do if we want um, to make if we want to ensure that we are doing the we have the right information, we are doing the right steps that we need to do. Yes,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
yeah, and yes, so let's talk about changing employers first. Yeah, for domestic workers in Hong Kong who want to change employers without going home, what steps do they need to know to do this?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, since last year, in the start of the pandemic, so many things have changed. It's been a really difficult year for everyone, but for domestic workers, I'm sure it's been incredibly stressful, with just policy changes and travel restrictions and the COVID situation back home. And I think, especially if you're a domestic worker looking to change jobs right now, it would be, maybe you have a lot of questions. There's just so much information going out in the media, in social media from friends and all of that. So there's some things to keep in mind if you're changing employers right now. Um, and for those who are in Hong Kong, particularly, they'll want to process locally most of the time because right now there's still a travel restriction of like the flight suspension from the Philippines. It's quite a different situation from Hong Kong in the Philippines or Indonesia. There's still a lot of cases, so a lot of workers want to be able to stay in Hong Kong when they're changing employers, and this means and the thing is, a lot of uh, cases that we've been handling, we've been able to get exemption from the immigration office, immigration department, in order to process the paperwork all locally, and the worker is able to change from one employer to a new employer without having to go home. So there is an exemption from immigration department, but this is very case by case basis. So it is definitely up to the decision of the immigration officer who is handling the case.
Mhm.
And these are just especially if a worker is ending a contract early. Something to keep in mind is right now the immigration department is quite um, being quite detailed about the approval process. So checking
Mhm.
over worker history. So if the worker has been working in Hong Kong for some time, they will want to just check like the history of those jobs, whether the worker has been able to finish the contract, or if they were ended prematurely, ended early, broken contract, or terminated. They would want to see reasons why. And in particular, if a worker has too many short contracts, which is around like just more than two short contracts in the past year, then
Mhm.
we see that immigration is likely to reject those requests to process locally and require the worker to go back home.
Mhm.
So this is something to keep in mind, definitely for workers who are thinking about ending their contract early, or changing jobs. Just if it's not always possible to stop a contract from ending early, but it's always it's always better if you can finish the contract. It looks great on your work history, and it's more secure for the immigration department, and and because the immigration department is looking at short contracts so closely, that's why it's important when you're considering a new job to
Mhm.
really be sure that you want to work in that job for a long time, and for the full contract period, hopefully, like that you're not going into the job without really knowing what it is. It can be very risky, because if you start working in that job and then you realize 1 month in, oh, I don't want to work in this job, and you want to break contract, then if you had a short contract just before and then want to break this contract, then the next job, you may not get your visa approvals or exemption to process locally. So this is something to keep in mind, and I think this is something that people have been asking a lot about, because there's been a few articles here and there about
Mhm.
immigration being more stringent with their checking of workers' history. Yeah.
Mm. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that, Victoria. I'm just going to show some of the comments. So we
Mm.
have yeah, from our team leader, our gold team leader, Herlene. She says good evening, and Rema, hello.
Hello.
Oh, Eileen.
Oh,
Uh,
you're one of the fair agency workers. Great. Good to have
yeah.
you.
Thank you for joining us. And hi, Bernadette. Good evening. And yeah, to please send your questions related to our topic tonight, which is updates on hiring and your most common questions about hiring in light of the current situation. So yes, going back to the question you mentioned about just being the immigration department being very being uh, stringent about the what do you call this? Is that requirements?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just the
Yeah.
contract duration, and whether
Mhm.
in the past year, if you've had too many short contracts, which is
Yeah.
just prematurely ended contracts, maybe
Mhm.
more than two in the year. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. So yeah, something to keep in mind,
Mm.
especially this year. And yes, and related to that question about for those who are looking to change employers, my next question is if there are employers hiring right now, and what salary and jobs are they offering?
Yeah. So even with the COVID-19 pandemic, employers still need support at home in Hong Kong. People are still going back to the office, and they still need childcare and elderly care and pet care and all the wonderful things that domestic workers support Hong Kong families. So definitely employers are looking to still hire domestic workers. And in terms of, so you don't need to be worried about that. I think if you are looking for a job, you can still go to Fair Agency and apply, and see what's out there. We are even seeing some employers are still willing to consider overseas workers too, because even though there is uncertainties with the timelines, and timelines are very long right now with and quarantine, sometimes employers they're able to plan ahead. So we do see some employers still being open to workers who are abroad, but obviously you can understand why employers would prefer to find candidates who are here in Hong Kong locally, because that's it's much more certainty in timelines, and being having a worker be able to take care of their child or whatever it is they need at home. In terms of salaries and the salaries. So the minimum allowable wage for domestic workers is 4,630. So it must be above that amount. Um, and obviously based on experience and the type of job, as the applicant, you should be able to kind of raise this question in your interviews and to discuss that amongst the other things that is involved in the job. It's not just salary, but what is the rest day arrangement going to be? Will there be a regular rest day? Will it be on the day that you want? I know a lot of domestic workers would like it to be on Sunday. But maybe it's another day you want. And then, what the sleeping arrangements are, and also what the job nature is. I think this is something we always encourage workers to speak up about in the interview with their prospective employers. It's not the time to be shy, especially when it comes to these very pertinent, like very relevant questions to your job. So this is I think there's still job opportunities out there, and just be able to navigate those things. And I'll just repeat what I said before is about when you're considering a job, really reflect on whether you think that this is a job that you can be happy in and successful in for the 2-year contract. You don't want to go into a job and then be surprised by the actual job and find that 1 month later you don't want to work in this job, because then that means like you will have to end the contract early, and then that could make it a bit difficult for your next visa application. It's always important to take all the full picture into account before agreeing to sign a contract.
Okay. Yeah. So yes, it's great to hear that. Yeah, the employers are hiring right now, and yeah, there are opportunities out there, and just be aware of as Victoria mentioned, that the nature of the job and the rest days, the requirements, and yeah, salary, and yeah,
Full
so
picture.
the full picture. That's it. And yes, it's good to make sure that these are all covered during the interview. So yeah, before we proceed, we have a question from Daniela. Yes. So hi, good evening, Daniela. Thank you for joining us. And how about she asked, how about if the applicant are in the Philippines and are they allowed to process?
So yes, the great question, Daniela. Thank you for sending that in. So for applicants who are overseas, in the Philippines or Indonesia, there are several things to take into account. Of course, they can still try to apply with agencies, but there are many things that are that are kind of challenges right now. So even within the Philippines, trying to get to trying to get all the processing done, it can be challenging. And then, but even before that, I have to say that even though employers are open to interviewing overseas candidates, they're more likely to try and find someone who is available in Hong Kong, who is changing jobs, rather than overseas candidates, just because there's so much uncertainty and it's a really long process. It's it's just the paperwork and the visa processing is taking I think like 14 weeks or something like that. So 14 so it's quite a long time. It's much longer than pre-COVID times. And then there is, travel restrictions and hotel quarantines. So those are some things on the employer side that they're thinking about. So if there's overseas candidates, they need to be able to be able to be patient because
Mhm.
there might not be many employers right away.
Mhm.
Um, and then we can talk about this a bit later, but there's a flight ban. There's a flight suspension from the Philippines to Hong Kong right now. It's
Yeah.
still in place. And I know there's discussion about changing that, but that's we're going to talk about that later. But also right now, people are not able to travel over, so that is another challenge. So I hope that answers the question. Like overseas candidates can still, at least for Fair Agency, we still interview overseas candidates, but they're
Mhm.
having to wait for a long time because employers are prioritizing local Hong Kong workers, workers who are already in Hong Kong,
Mhm.
or and also it's just a really long process right now, overseas processing. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Daniela. And yes, for those who have just joined us, yes, we are Uplifters, and we are a nonprofit organization offering a free online money management and personal free online course on money management and personal development. So yes, our topic for tonight is updates on your most common questions about hiring during COVID-19, and we have Victoria and communications head of communications for Fair Employment Foundation. So yes, please don't hesitate to ask your questions, and yes, just say that you're here, and yeah, we'd love to hear from you. This one for my next, our next question is. We often get this question in our Facebook group, Uplift Your Life, about COVID testing and vaccination requirements. So yes, are there yeah are these needed for those who want to find their next job?
Okay, so great, important question. Um, we know that all domestic workers in Hong Kong had to go through 2 rounds of compulsory testing. Um, so that was a compulsory testing that was just like it happened twice, but it was a one-time only thing. um, and on that, I would just say make sure to keep the records of having those tested and having those COVID tests. And if you've gotten your vaccination, just to have a photo of the vaccination card with you. It's just if a labor officer or police officer will ask you for those, it's good to just be able to show that. But in terms of finding a job, signing a
Mhm.
contract, there is no requirement yet for
Mhm.
this. Um, the yeah, so there's no official requirement for this, but this is something also that a lot of employers may ask of their applicants that they're interviewing. They may ask the worker to go for additional testing before coming into being able to actually start work. Maybe they have children at home or elderly, so they're trying to protect their family members. And also they may ask for a vaccination, but these are not necessarily requirements yet. Obviously, domestic workers are also able to take free vaccinations there's two vaccine types available. So it's the BioNTech one, and there's the Sinovac. And I'm sure there's lots of information from uplifters on that as well. But workers are also able to get vaccinated here in Hong Kong for free. So that's something to consider. But now I think kind of switching to workers who are overseas.
Mhm.
I want to watch what happens there because there's been some discussion now to change the flight suspension situation. So I think flights from the Philippines have been suspended since April. So it's been a very long time, and there has been some discussion now about how to lift the suspension from the high risk countries. So the Philippines, Indonesia, and the UK, and some other countries are in this group called the high risk countries. And today, an article came out, I think, from the SDMP that there is some discussion to allow people from these high risk countries who have been fully vaccinated to enter. But this is still a discussion. And one of the things, if Hong Kong were to do this, they would do it on some conditions. And one condition is that the country needs to have a vaccine regulatory authority that is recognized by the World Health Organization, the WHO. And unfortunately, the Philippines and Indonesia, their regulatory authorities are not yet recognized by WHO. So if the Hong Kong government was to make this the condition, then travelers from the Philippines and Indonesia wouldn't fulfill this requirement. So the flight suspension would still be in place even if vaccinated travelers from the UK and other countries were able to come over. So that's the differentiator. There's like something as the detail that needs to be worked out. The articles that came out today also mentioned that the Hong Kong government is working with the Philippine and Indonesian governments to try and figure this out as well. And obviously that'd be great. So vaccination in the end for overseas candidates become, one of the things that need to be done in order for them to enter. So in this way, it could become a requirement in that way, but it's all still not figured out yet, and just something to keep in mind. And the good thing in the Philippines is that overseas Filipino workers are now in the priority A1 group for vaccination. So they're able to register, and hopefully they will be able to choose the vaccine that they can take. But I know this will depend on the local government unit, so the LGU. So just make sure to try to contact the LGU's facility for vaccination, and just to make sure what the process is and what supplies there are. If you go to our website, we've also made a link to the vaccines that are recognized by the Hong Kong government. So if you are a worker who is in the Philippines right now, you'll want to take the ones that are recognized by the Hong Kong government, so you can be eligible for anything that in the future. So that's how it looks right now. Things are still up in the air. Nothing is confirmed yet. So I know there's a lot of articles and things coming out on social media being shared. Just take a pause. Yeah. Oh, sorry, we lost your voice. Oh, there we go. Oh, no, we lost your audio. No worries. Maybe it's just me.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay. Thank you. Yeah, sorry about that. I think there's a technical glitch. Yeah, it's very interesting, and thank you for informing us about that. Yeah, let's make it clear. I also read that article today, and yeah, it was misleading. So yeah, thank you, Victoria, for clarifying that. So for now, it's still under discussion that vaccinated domestic workers can now go
Yeah, still
to Hong
discussion.
Kong campus.
Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah.
And you mentioned about the vaccines that are recognized by the Hong Kong government. Could you tell us a little something, a little, could you tell us a little more about it?
Sure. Yeah. So there, each country will have a list of vaccines that they recognize, and for Hong Kong, the Center of Health Protection has a list, um, and it just is it's a PDF that's online, but also we've linked to it in our in our own website as well. Um, I can share the link with you later, generally about of it. But those are the vaccines that travelers coming into Hong Kong should try to take if they want to be have their vaccine recognized. Yeah, there's not I won't list out the names. You know, the names of the vaccines are very complicated, but yeah, just make sure that you are looking it up before taking or choosing the vaccine that you'll be getting. And in Hong Kong, the ones that are available are the it's called Fosun Pharma and BioNTech. Um,
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
one, and then the CoronaVac, which is Sinovac,
Mhm.
is the other one. Yeah.
Yes. And for those who are in the Philippines, yes, just please get in touch with your LGU, your local government unit, to make sure that you have the vaccine that you prefer. And I'm going to just screen the website of Fair. It's here, and for more information, please visit your website. And you've been sharing resources with us, so yeah, we'll keep you up to date on that. And yeah, thank you, Victoria, for clarifying that and for the resources. We'll make sure to keep you up to date with the latest with the updates on this. And here is the email address of Fair Agency, and if you're on Facebook, yeah, just look for them, Fair Agency, and their numbers in Shengwan and Shunwan. So yes, everyone, please don't hesitate to ask your questions, and we'll do our best to reply to you. Yes, we have some more comments here. I will just screen them. Oh, we have a follow up question from Daniela. She asked about the applicants in the Philippines, and her question is, what if she already have an employer because she's been here before, but she just need to go back to origin?
Yeah. So, yeah, like I mentioned before, overseas candidates can still process. It's just the travel restrictions mostly that and like the longer timelines. So
Mm,
your friend Daniela has an employer already. So um, they so they just need an agency to help them with visa processing. So for Fair Agency, we call this the direct hire service, where an employer and worker have already found each other and they just need the support of an agency to process the
mm,
paperwork. So the employer could reach out to Fair Agency and we can explain all the service details. And we will work with our partner agency in the Philippines to make it all happen. But just to keep in mind, current timelines for overseas processing is still several weeks. It's much
mm,
longer than before. Um, I think, and also, as I mentioned before, the flight suspension is still in place.
mm,
Um, we don't know yet when it will be lifted. It's been in place since April. Um, but then, if you're just starting the process now, maybe by the time all the paperwork is all done, the travel situation might have gotten better. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Hope, fingers crossed. So
Mhm.
Daniela, if you want to ask your friend's employer to look at our website, all of our service details are there. We have all the price and what's included all there. And of course, we never charge workers, and we our partner agency never charges workers too. We make sure of that. And yeah, you can feel free to share the information. Yeah.
And yes, this is the you can see in your screens the website of FAIR. Yeah, and I think it's her question is related to to our next question. Yeah, if there are employers hiring from overseas with the flight suspension still in place.
Yeah. So exactly, I think we are coming back to this main topic, but yeah, I think still employers need the support of workers. For Hong Kong, domestic workers play such a big part in our household lifestyle and um, the way we're able to run the city. So employers are still open to hiring, and even to overseas workers. I think it's because employers who are able to consider overseas candidates are more open, like maybe have planned a lot in advance and are
Mhm.
willing to wait. But of course, there's a lot of uncertainties. So um, the first preference would be for workers to be in Hong Kong locally. Um, so, uh, overseas workers, if you have friends or family members who want to apply from back home, um, they still can, but it's about being patient and not expecting things to be really fast, because especially for first time workers. Um, Also, they still need to go through training and things like that, and that has been a little bit difficult with the pandemic situation and not having face to face, and the training policies have also really changed. And so, for first time workers, all first time workers must get the NC2 certificate. Um, and currently, I believe that training authorities in the Philippines are able to provide assessment for free.
Mhm.
But if for training, there's somewhat limited number of training centers that are operating. And I'll mention one of Fair Employment Foundation's initiatives in the Philippines is called Fair Training Center. It's also a nonprofit training center, and they're working in partnership with TESDA and ILO at the moment, to pilot an online training program for first-time workers. So it's actually a blended module, where we have 10 days of training and 2 days of face-to-face. And this is being piloted in partnership with the government and
Mhm.
ILO. So it's available for free. So that's what the team in Fair Training Center is doing. So if you also have any friends and family who are in need of training, you can look
Yeah.
at fairtraining.org,
Mhm.
Fair Training Center on Facebook as well.
Oh, that's great. It's really great. It's Fair Training Center.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Please make sure to check the website, and it's a free. They provide free training, and yeah, it's a good way to
Well,
add to your skills and
yeah, exactly. It also really shares a lot of like uplifters' values
yeah.
and financial education and personal development. But Fair Training Center really emphasizes that the professionalization of domestic workers, and workers should feel proud of who they are and what they're doing and their goals, and being able to achieve
Mhm.
them by working abroad. So yeah, definitely check them out as well.
Okay. Yes, thanks, Victoria. And I'm just going to show some of the comments. Good evening, Shelby, Yuban, hello, Amber, good evening, and hi, Nancy, hello, Anne Marie, hello. Great topic. And from Nancy, she says, I love fair agencies, zero placements offered above minimum salary in Hong Kong, and staff are very accommodating. Thank you for that. Salute and proud of your services to domestic workers in Hong Kong.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thanks. Oh, we have so many nice comments here. And from Rensley, I love and I like this fair agency first time, but I really feel there are concerns. All staff are good. I love it really. Thank you so much, all staff. Yeah, with two hearts.
That's so
Thank you,
great.
Randy.
Thank
And
you.
from Elma, we have yeah, I love fair, and also another one from Live and Joy. Yes, I love fair. So
Uh, yeah, thank
yeah,
you.
and from Jocelyn, the fair agency, their staff are good. The agency that you can trust. Wow, that's a very good tagline. The
Yeah,
agency that you can trust.
share
And
thank you.
um, yeah, Mary Grace, she's joining us from Singapore. Good evening. Hello. And yes, we have another question here, but can she's no name, but she's asking about the quarantine arrangements.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, can how many days or can screen it? Yeah. Okay, I think I lost the the question from here.
No worries. But I'll talk about quarantine in Hong Kong.
Mhm. Yeah.
So right now, so I can talk, yeah, in quarantine in Hong Kong, um, right now, unfortunately, because of the flight suspension, nobody can come from the Philippines. Um, but when it is it's likely to still be the maximum quarantine time of 21
Mhm.
days in the hotel. Um, but again, we that might change, especially like with the vaccinations. It might change. Um, but in terms of quarantine arrangements, what happens is the employer currently all employers are required to sign an undertaking, and that undertaking says that the employer is responsible for covering the costs of quarantine, the hotel, food, um, and in the situation. So that's you don't workers shouldn't be paying for the quarantine time.
Mhm.
That's something to keep in mind. Um, in terms of salaries during quarantine, this is actually not very black and white. So this is something that workers and employers are asked to have a mutual agreement on. So it's not really required of employers to pay workers who are during the quarantine period of 21 days.
Mhm.
But we also see a lot of employers, they understand that workers, when they come to Hong Kong, they may not have any cash on them, or so they some employers are willing to pay like a part of a month's salary during that
Mhm.
time. So this is something you can always try to bring up in a professional way to the perspective the new employer. Um, and when work travelers arrive, what happens is from the there's a test at the airport, and then transportation, just going directly to the hotel, and then
Mhm.
within the hotel, quarantiners are not allowed to leave their room for the full period.
Mhm.
Um, so this can be quite a lonely time, but luckily there's people like uplifters, many courses online, YouTube, and things like that. Um, but again, like this might all change when the
Mhm.
suspension is actually lifted, we don't know what the situation will be yet. Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully the discussion will go very well, and yeah, and domestic workers can come back to Hong Kong as soon as possible.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's time to. It was very informative. Thank you, Victoria, for that. And yeah, thank you for answering that question. And I think we just have one more question from Impen. So I think this is our last question for tonight. And yes, she asks if what if the suspension is lifted and the helper has already visa but not yet vaccinated? Can she enter Hong Kong?
So we don't know yet what the suspension exemption would be like so far, but the most recent articles showed that it will be based on vaccination, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it will be, you know, the the Hong Kong government is considering lifting the flight ban from the high risk countries for travelers who are fully vaccinated and their country has regulatory authorities that are recognized by the World Health Organization. So currently, Philippines and Indonesia, their regulatory authorities are not recognized by WHO. So this is the reason why this stage of the flight suspension might not apply to Philippines and Indonesia. But it's likely when those exemptions and suspension lifting comes into place, it will be based on the vaccination. And in the Philippines, OFWs are A1 category for the vaccination priority. So they are able to register. And when they do register for the vaccine, they should ask for the vaccines that are recognized by Hong Kong. Um, and it, so, yeah, even for other countries, if with travel right now, vaccination means hopefully um, uh, like less restriction and shorter quarantine period. So it's a good idea if you are planning to travel, planning to come to Hong Kong. Um, but we don't know yet. We don't know what the requirements are yet. So this is something to keep in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, again, it's a developing situation, and please visit the website of FAIR or their Facebook page for updates on this. And yeah, Impan says thank you. Yes,
Great.
and stay safe. So yeah, I think it's we can wrap up. Yeah, but before we end this broadcast, let's do our evening ritual. I think you already know this, Victoria.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the simple ritual that we're doing in our free online course, Dare to Dream, and this is one of the best habits you can create in your life. So, to everyone watching, please feel free to share with us what made you happy today in the comment box too. So, yeah, Victoria, can you share with us the three things that made you happy today?
Sure. Yeah, I think definitely right now made me so happy being here, being able to share some information, and to really hear the comments from everyone. Thank you so much for the nice messages about FAIR and all your questions. I know it's a really complicated time, so really appreciate that. I also the other things. Today there was a beautiful sunset. I was able to see. I love the summer sky in Hong Kong. It's always very nice. And then the third thing would be, oh, I received Uplifter's newsletter today, and yeah, so cool to see such great work and a community of like learners and achievers being developed online through Uplifters. So it was really great to see that as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Victoria. For me, the three things that made me happy today are, of course, this episode. So thank you for joining us, and it's always a pleasure to have you. And yeah, it's been a great uh, session. We had good questions, so we were able to provide information and answer questions from our community. So yeah, thank you so much. And as always, we we get our resources on the latest updates from you guys. So yeah, thanks again for that. And second is, yeah, I had a good cup of coffee and pasta for dinner. And third is, yeah, just like what you said, it's a beautiful day in Hong Kong. Yeah, the sunset and yeah, sunrise this morning. So yeah, it's a great day.
Mm.
And ending the day with this special episode of our Uplift Your Night Facebook Live series made it more special. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining us, and please just ask your questions in the comments, and we'll reply to you. And yeah, thank you again, Victoria. Thank you to Fair, and yeah, thank you for all the work that you do. And I think I will just screen one more comment from Eileen. Yeah, thank you for tonight's topic. I need to visit Fair Employment in a month for good advice. And shout out to Miss Antonia and Shangwan office for good accommodation with the year 2019. God bless.
Thank you. Antonio would love that. um, Thank you so much, Emily, for organizing this. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining in.
So yeah, thank you everyone. Good night. Thank you,
Okay,
Victoria.
thank you. Bye.